I stood in the living room, my 3 grandchildren huddled behind me. Facing me was my daughter-in-law, Kendra Wallace, a woman trembling, her hands tightly gripping the divorce paper that had just been served. "What have you done to the children?" Her voice was shrill, filled with panic. "Are they afraid of me?" "I'm their mother." I did not answer. I just looked straight into her eyes in silence. In that moment, every memory from 12 days ago came flooding back clearly. That day, Kendra called me. Her voice was cold, tinged with a commanding tone. "I'm leaving the 3 children with you, Mother. You're free anyway. Retired people have nothing to do free. Nothing to do." I had taught for 35 years at Jefferson Elementary School, right here in Birmingham, Alabama. 35 years living alone after my husband died in the multi-car pileup on I-20. 35 years of working, sacrificing, and raising my son to be a good man, only to be considered free in the end. I just smiled faintly, said a brief courtesy, and hung up. But in my mind at that moment, a plan had formed. A plan Kendra would never have suspected. Now, in this small living room, I stood before the woman who had manipulated my entire family for 10 years. She was slowly collapsing, layers of arrogance peeling away, leaving only dread. Behind me, Devin, the 12-year-old boy who once screamed at me, "You're the worst grandma in the world," was now clutching the hem of my shirt, his shoulders slightly shaking. Tiana, the 10-year-old girl who once said, "Mommy says your house is dirty and you're poor," was now wrapping her arms tightly around my waist. And Isaiah, the 7-year-old whom his own mother once called an unfortunate accident, was hiding his face behind me, nestled against the back he trusted the most. I took a deep breath and spoke, my voice calm yet firm. "They have the right to choose who will protect them. And they have chosen." Kendra stepped forward. Devin flinched, holding on to me tighter. Then, from the doorway, Terrence, my son, spoke, his voice low and steady. "Don't come near the kids, Kendra. You have no more rights over them." He held a thick folder in his hand, the final evidence to end a long 5 years of lies. That was the moment everything came crashing down. The moment the woman who once made my entire family turn against each other finally had to bow before the truth. But if you want to understand why those 3 children, the ones who once scorned me, who once repeated their mother's words to oppose their grandmother, chose me instead of their own mother, then I have to tell you the story from the beginning. From the day Kendra Wallace stepped into my life, from the initial sweet words, until everything gradually became corrupted. And from the moment I realized, enough is enough, I won't let it continue any longer. My name is May Richardson, 67 years old. And this is the story of how a retired school teacher saved her own family from the clutches of manipulation. If you think only the powerful can control others, wait until you see what happens when an ordinary woman decides to take a stand. The story begins here. That afternoon, after Kendra hung up, I sat motionless in the old armchair in the living room. The coffee cup in my hand was cold. Surrounding me were travel brochures, Yellowstone National Park, the Grand Canyon, the Pacific Coast Highway, places I had dreamed of visiting for 45 years, but never had the chance. Yesterday, I had officially retired, the first day in my life that truly belonged to me after 35 years of dedication. I remember sitting here, opening the brochures, imagining my first trip. Perhaps this autumn, when the maples turn color, the air is crisp, and I am truly free. But now, only one sentence echoed in my mind. You have nothing to do. Nothing to do. I looked down at my hands, fingers swollen from arthritis, tiny scars from years of cutting paper, binding books, and making teaching aids, calluses from holding chalk, from washing dishes at 3 a.m. after baking cakes for school fundraisers. These hands, had they truly done nothing? Memories rushed in like a tide. Terrence was 3 years old when Richard, my husband, passed away. That morning he kissed me goodbye, stroked our son's hair, and drove off for a business trip. On Interstate 20 near Atlanta, the snow fell heavily. 50 cars collided like dominoes. 23 people died instantly. Richard lived for 3 days in the intensive care unit. 3 days that cost me 5 years of savings to cover hospital bills. 3 days I sat by his bedside, holding his hand as it grew cold. "Take care of our son," he whispered. "Teach him to be a good man." When he closed his eyes, I was 29, a 3-year-old child, $100 in my bank account, and a vast future with no idea where to start. The early years were a hell I do not wish to fully recall. I taught 2 shifts, mornings at Jefferson Elementary, afternoons tutoring at home. If there was money for a pair of shoes, they were for Terrence. If he wanted a birthday toy, I skipped dinner that night and pretended I had already eaten. My mother, now deceased, once said, "May, you'll work yourself to death. You have to find another man, one who can take care of you." But I couldn't. Every time I looked at Terrence with eyes identical to his father's, I knew no man could love my son the way I did. No one. One Christmas, when Terrence was 8, I saved for 6 months to buy him the bicycle he longed for. On the night of December 24th, after he fell asleep, I sat in the kitchen and realized I had no money left for Christmas dinner. I took off my grandmother's pendant, the only piece of jewelry I had besides my wedding ring, and sold it for $50. To buy a turkey, a decent meal for the 2 of us. Terrence never knew. To him, his mother was a hero. His mother could do anything. When he entered high school, the educational costs doubled. Books, clothes, bus fare, supplies. I still worked 2 shifts, even selling baked goods at the church every Sunday. My hands back then, calloused, swollen, but never stopping the work. And then, all that effort paid off. Terrence was accepted into Ohio State University, industrial engineering major. The son of the widowed Mrs. Richardson, the boy without a father, was about to become an engineer. I cried all night out of happiness. But life has a cruel way of reminding us that even the strongest people can be brought down by love. I didn't know that the pride of that day was also the start of the most painful 10 years of my life. Kendra appeared when Terrence was in his 3rd year of college. "Mom, I want you to meet someone special," Terrence said after Sunday church service. The girl stood there, pastel pink dress, radiant smile, black hair flowing like a stream. She looked like a porcelain doll. "Oh, Mrs. Richardson," she hugged me tightly. "Terrence has told me so much about you." "I admire you immensely. Raising a child so well all by yourself, you truly are my hero." I, a person who hadn't received a genuine hug in 20 years, suddenly felt my heart soften. The girl spoke sweetly, showed care, and seemed to understand me. Kendra said she came from a poor family in West Virginia, her father a miner, her mother a waitress. "That's why I understand you so well, Mrs. Richardson. You and I both know what hardship is." I believed her. I wanted to believe her, because I was happy to see Terrence in love. I didn't want to see the warning signs. They married right after Terrence graduated. I paid half the wedding cost with my retirement savings. "This is an investment in my son's happiness," I told myself. Kendra cried. I thought it was out of emotion. Looking back now, perhaps she cried out of regret, because the wedding was not extravagant enough. The change was slow, like poison administered drop by drop. Initially, it was gentle remarks. "It's a shame Terrence grew up without a male role model. So, you see, he lacks a bit of ambition. If you had been more financially savvy, Terrence could have gone to a private university. No offense, but your baking is a bit simple. I do more of a gourmet style." Every sentence was a small cut, but I endured. For Terrence. Always for Terrence. When Devin was born, I thought things would get better. I arrived at the hospital with a knitted woolen blanket I had spent 9 months making. With every stitch, I embedded a grandmother's love. Kendra looked at the blanket, smiling coldly. "Thank you, but we have plenty of stuff from Nordstrom." "This You can donate at Nordstrom. While I was still buying clothes at Goodwill to save money, she was purchasing designer brands with Terrence's salary. Then Tiana was born, then Isaiah, and with each child I was pushed further away. Kendra had 100 reasons. The children need routine. You'll spoil them. Your house isn't safe. Your parenting views are outdated. She said casually, kids nowadays need early stimulation. English classes, swimming, robotics. Not peanut butter sandwiches like Terrence had back then, peanut butter sandwiches. That phrase still cuts deep within me to this day. The biggest shock came on Tiana's 5th birthday. I had saved for 3 months to buy the dollhouse she adored. I arrived at their house in my best dress, clutching the carefully wrapped gift. The party was held in the backyard, a bouncy castle, a clown, even a Disney princess show. But my name was not on the guest list. "Oh, May, I'm so sorry. This is just a party for school friends and parents. You understand? They are different people. We wouldn't want you to feel uncomfortable." Uncomfortable. The grandmother of the birthday girl. Considered different people. I saw Terrence standing in the back, playing with the children. He knew I was there, but he did nothing. I turned my back, walking away with the gift in my hand, tears falling the whole way home. That night, I donated the dollhouse to an orphanage. At least there, it would be appreciated. And now, after all these years of humiliation, Kendra wanted me to watch her children, as if all the wounds could be erased with one phone call. But Kendra did not know. 35 years of teaching taught me more than knowledge. I understand child psychology. I have studied dysfunctional families, witnessed hundreds of mothers using their children as weapons, and above all, I have learned how to wait for the perfect time to act. I looked at the clock. 3 o'clock in the morning. In 4 hours, Kendra would knock, bringing 3 children who barely knew who I was. 3 children who had been taught to scorn their grandmother, the one their mother called poor and boring. I smiled faintly in the darkness. If there is one thing I know well after all these years, it is this. No one understands how to change a child better than a teacher. And this morning, those 3 children were about to discover who their Grandma May truly was. Sometimes to save a child, you have to start by breaking down the very wall the adults built. And the next morning, when the knock came, I was ready. At precisely 7 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Not 7:05, and certainly not 7:10. Kendra Wallace was always punctual, when it benefited her. I opened the door. The 3 children stood there, dragging suitcases bigger than themselves, their faces sullen and cold. "I don't have time to chat," Kendra said, not bothering to step across the threshold. "Devin is allergic to dust. Tiana doesn't eat green vegetables, and Isaiah needs his iPad to sleep. Their medicine is in the blue suitcase. I'll be back in 2 weeks." I asked softly, "What about Terrence? Is he not coming to say goodbye to the children?" Kendra shrugged, her voice dripping with disdain. "Terrence is working as usual. Someone has to earn money to support the family. Not everyone is fortunate enough to retire on a civil servant pension." I smiled faintly inwardly. My civil servant pension, $1,500 a month, after 35 years in the classroom. Exactly the amount Kendra spent on manicures and eyelash extensions every month. The 3 children stepped inside, dragging their feet heavily. Devin, 12, eyes glued to his phone. Tiana, 10, wearing her customary look of scorn. Isaiah, 7, glancing around for the TV. "Be good for Grandma," Kendra said, her tone indifferent. Then she leaned close and whispered in my ear, "And don't put any of your moralizing ideas into their heads. Remember, I decide whether you get to see them again." She turned and left. Not a farewell, not a kiss, not a hug. Only the sound of her heels clacking on the steps and the fading engine noise of her brand-new SUV. I stood there, in the doorway, looking at the 3 children. their eyes viewing me as if I were the enemy. "Grandma, where's the Wi-Fi?" Devin demanded, his voice commanding. "I need Wi-Fi right now." "The modem is broken," I lied. I had actually unplugged it earlier. "What? No way! Mom! Mom!" the boy screamed, his voice thick with frustration. "Your mother is gone, Devin, and screaming won't bring the internet back. You're the worst grandma in the world. Nobody likes you." There it was, the sentence I had prepared myself to hear. Kendra's venom, transmitted through my 12-year-old grandson. But it was all right. I knew what I was dealing with. "I'm hungry," Tiana chimed in, "but I won't eat your cooking." "Mom says your food is awful. That's why Dad is so thin." "And I want to watch YouTube," Isaiah added. "At home, I watch it all day." I looked at the 3 children, the perfect products of neglect, wrapped in the guise of modern parenting. Children who knew no boundaries, understood no respect, and had been trained to look down on me. "You know," I said slowly, my voice calm, "your mother asked me to look after you, not to entertain you. There's food in the kitchen, water from the tap, beds in the rooms. If you need anything else, you'll have to find it yourself." "Find it?" Tiana's eyes widened. "We're kids!" "We don't have to find anything." "In this house," I replied, "everyone contributes." That's how I was raised, and that's how I raised your father, before your mother spoiled him. "I'm going to tell Mom you treated us badly," Isaiah wailed, a clumsy threat. "Feel free to," I said gently, "and be sure to mention that I just looked at her Facebook, especially those pictures in Puerto Vallarta last month, the time she said she was at a training seminar." The 3 children fell silent. They didn't fully understand, but something in my tone made them hesitate. They sensed it. Their grandmother was not the person she used to be. Sometimes you don't have to yell to regain control. You just have to let the person opposite realize you know more than they think. That was the first moment the power in this house began to shift. The first night was hell. Devin kicked his bedroom door. Tiana cried for hours, demanding her special food, and Isaiah deliberately wet the bed, a declaration of defiance. They were testing me. They wanted to break me, just like their mother had tried to do for years. But then, around 2 a.m, I heard soft weeping from Tiana's room. Not a tantrum. It was real crying, choked, trembling. I walked in silently. Tiana was sitting on the bed, clutching a crumpled photo. "What do you have there, sweetie?" I asked softly. She started, hiding the photo under her pillow. "Nothing. Please go out." But I had seen it. It was a picture of Tiana and me, when she was a baby. One of the few times I was allowed to hold her before Kendra began her separation campaign. "Do you miss your mother?" I asked, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "No." The answer snapped out too quickly, too stiffly, then it softened. "My mom travels a lot. I'm used to it." There it was, the first crack. Kendra hadn't just abandoned me, she had abandoned her own children, using money and gifts instead of love. "Does your mother travel often for work?" I asked gently. "I don't know. Once a month, sometimes more. She says it's for work, but..." She stopped. "But what?" "Nothing. Mom says family business should be kept within the family. Family business should be kept within the family." The mantra of abusers. Silence. The cruelest chain. I stood up, walking toward the door. Before leaving, I turned back. "Tiana, tomorrow, would you like to learn how to make the peanut butter cookies you used to love?" Her eyes lit up, then dimmed again. "My mom said your kitchen is dirty." "Your mom says a lot of things. Why don't you see for yourself tomorrow?" I smiled, gently closing the door, leaving her to her thoughts. The first seed had been sown. What I didn't know then was that Devin's phone, the one he couldn't use because of the lost Wi-Fi, contained messages that could change everything. Messages revealing Kendra Wallace's darkest secrets, lines of text explaining the real reason she went to Miami. And when I discovered them, I understood that I wasn't just saving my grandchildren. I was saving this entire family from a woman more dangerous than I had ever imagined. But that was a story for tomorrow. Tonight, I just needed to know one thing. Within the hearts of these 3 children, there was still a soft part, a part that longed to be truly loved, and I would find a way to touch that part, no matter how long it took. Do you think only adults know how to keep secrets? Wait until you hear what I found on that phone. The morning of the second day was completely different. I had a plan. At 6 o'clock, Carol brought a shoebox. Here is everything you asked for: 3 pea-sized recorders, a smoke detector camera, and this. She handed me a manila envelope. Credit report. Kendra is $30,000 in debt, all in Terrence's name. My heart sank. My son knew nothing. From Child Protective Services, Lauren will stop by tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon, a routine check-in, Carol added. But May, you need proof. Yes, proof. Exactly what I was going to collect. When the children woke up, the dining table was ready. Animal-shaped pancakes, star-cut fruit, chocolate milk. Devin came down first, stopping short. What is this? Breakfast. Eat before it gets cold. He took a bite, his lips barely curling before he suppressed it. It's okay. I've had better. Tiana and Isaiah followed the aroma to the kitchen. Isaiah cheered. Smells so good, Grandma. Tiana nudged his elbow. Shh. We're not allowed to. She stopped herself. Not allowed to what, Tiana? Nothing. After eating, I laid out the rules. If you want Wi-Fi, TV, or any privileges, you must contribute. Devin washes the dishes. Tiana makes her bed. Isaiah tidies his toys. That's child labor, Devin blurted out. No, son. Child labor is what I saw on your mother's phone. I showed a screenshot of Facebook. Kendra in a bikini, arm in arm with a man who was not Terrence. The 3 kids peered at it. That's Uncle Dominic, Isaiah said innocently. He sometimes comes over when Dad is at work. Devin quickly covered his brother's mouth. Too late. The second piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. How often does Uncle Dominic visit? I asked calmly. We're not allowed to talk about it, Devin said in a panic. Mom said if we tell, Dad will be so sad he'll die. The level of manipulation was worse than I thought. Your father won't die of sadness, I stated clearly, but I need the truth to protect the family. Tiana crossed her arms. Why do you need to know? Because I love you all. Love means protection. Isaiah stammered. Why did Mom say you were awful when your cooking is so good? I quietly slid the first voice recorder under the table. Your mother says many things. What do you all think? Tiana looked around the kitchen, her voice softening. Your house smells like cinnamon and coffee. It smells like home. That afternoon, while the children grumbled but followed their assigned chores, I checked Devin's phone. I remembered. Kids now synchronize to the cloud. With a little patience, I gained access to his Google account. What appeared made my blood run cold. WhatsApp chats between Kendra and Dominic. Not just adultery. They were planning. Kendra. Almost done. Michael signed the papers without reading. The house is already transferred to my name. Dominic. What about the kids? Kendra. We'll leave them with the old lady as soon as he files for divorce. He's always at work. He has no chance of getting custody. Dominic. Need more money to move permanently to Miami. Kendra. The old lady's house is worth at least $200,000. When she dies, Michael inherits, and I get half. Or we figure out another way to take it all. Kendra had opened 3 credit cards in Terrence's name, sold the car registered in his name, and fabricated a theft, and tried to use my house as collateral for a loan, but needed my signature. Her business trips were actually meetings with Dominic in Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, and Playa del Carmen, spending Terrence's hard-earned money. I photographed everything, Messages, pictures, travel schedules. That evening during dinner, I made a calculated move. "What do you want to do tomorrow?" "Go home," Devin replied mechanically. "Which home? Your father's house or Uncle Dominic's house?" Tiana's fork clattered. I don't understand what you're talking about." "Tiana, I know this is hard. Does Uncle Dominic live with you?" "No." "Well, sometimes when Dad is on a business trip, Uncle stays in the living room to watch us." Isaiah mumbled, "That's not true. He sleeps in Mom and Dad's room. They don't let us in. There are strange noises." Devin jumped up. "Shut up, Isaiah!" "Mom said not to talk." "Why are you not allowed to talk about it?" I asked. Tiana burst into tears. "Mom said Dad is boring and Uncle Dominic is more fun. We're going to have a new house with a pool soon. It won't be poor like Dad. It won't end up like you in this ugly old house." I hugged her. For the first time in years, Tiana let me hug her, crying like the 10-year-old she was. Devin whispered, his voice less hostile. Does Dad know, Grandma?" "Not yet, dear." "Will you tell him?" "I will do something better. Protect you. Protect your father. And let your mother get exactly what she deserves." That night, when all three were sound asleep, the first time without protest, I called Terrence. "How are the kids, Mom?" "Kendra said you volunteered to watch them volunteered." The liar twisted everything. "They're fine, son." "Stop by tomorrow after work. I need to discuss the house." "Is it urgent, Mom?" "Kendra told me not to bother her while she's on her business trip." "There's a leak in the roof." "I'm afraid it might affect the structure." Not entirely a lie. The house does have a little dampness. But the leak wasn't on the roof. "Okay, I'll be there around 7. I hung up, looking at the calendar. Kendra wouldn't be back for 12 more days. 12 days to unravel 10 years of lies and manipulation. But this time, I had something I never had before. The 3 children had begun to see the truth. Sometimes, justice doesn't arrive with sirens and handcuffs. It starts with a voice recorder, a photograph, and 3 pairs of eyes that dared to speak the truth. Tomorrow, Terrence will walk into this house, and nothing will ever be the same. Day 3 opened with an explosion, quite literally. At 5 in the morning, Isaiah managed to get hold of the fireworks I had stored for the 4th of July and lit them inside the house. The dining room curtains were scorched, smoke billowed up. Tiana screamed, "Grandma, fire!" I rushed over with the fire extinguisher. Thank goodness it was always in the kitchen. The fire was out, but the smoke lingered heavily. Isaiah stood in the mess, giggling. "It's as fun as on YouTube." "Fun?" I looked straight at him. "You just almost burned down the house." "So what? This house is ugly. Mom said when you die, she'll sell it and buy a nicer one." There it was. Kendra's venom spilling out of a 7-year-old's mouth. This time, it didn't hurt me. It gave me fuel. "You're right. This is an old house," I said calmly. "It's old because, in this house, I raised your father alone after your grandfather died. It's old because I sewed every uniform to 3 in the morning to afford tuition. It's old because this ugly kitchen cooked thousands of lunches so your father wouldn't go to school hungry." Isaiah fell silent. "And if your mother thinks she'll get this house, she's mistaken." "Yesterday I changed my will. The house will go to the orphanage fund. Children who are grateful for a roof over their heads." Devin ran down, having overheard. "You can't. That's our inheritance." "Your inheritance?" "Children who don't bother to visit me, treating me like a servant." "Mom said it's our right." I took out my phone and played the audio recording from last night's dinner. Their own voices echoed in the room. "Dad is boring. Uncle Dominic is more fun. We won't be poor like Dad anymore." The 3 stood frozen. You recorded us?" Tiana's face was pale. "I record everything, because when your mother comes back and twists the story, I will have proof." Right then, Devin exploded. "You're a nosy old lady. Dad never visits because of you. Mom hates you because you're jealous of other people's happiness. He started throwing things. The vase my mother left me, photo frames, my retirement award. Tiana ran into the kitchen, throwing plates onto the floor. Isaiah grabbed the photo album. Wedding photos, pictures of young Terrence, photos of his grandparents, tearing them into nightmarish confetti. I stood in the eye of the storm, calm. The hidden camera Carol installed was recording everything. 20 minutes later, all three were exhausted, panting amidst the wreckage. "Are you done?" I asked. They looked at each other, confused that I wasn't angry. "Now you will clean up. Every shard, every piece of photo. And while you clean, think about this. If your mother loved you, would she abandon you to go to Miami with Dominic? Would she use you as a weapon against your father? Would she teach you to hate the only person truly taking care of you?" "You're not taking care of us," Devin protested vehemently. "Then who persuaded your father not to sell the house when he lost his job 3 years ago? Who quietly loaned him money for tuition when Kendra spent it on trips? Who saved for each of your college funds from the moment you were born?" I took 3 savings passbooks from the drawer. Devin, $4,500. Tiana, $3,800. Isaiah, $2,500. Every month, from my $1,500 pension, I set aside $100 for each of you. Devin held the passbook, his hand trembling. "For us?" "It was for you." "Not anymore. Tomorrow I will close these accounts. The money will go to children who know how to appreciate it." Tiana was the first to break. "Grandma, we didn't know." "Didn't know or didn't want to know? Believing a lie is easier than seeing for yourselves, isn't it?" The doorbell rang. Lauren, Carol's sister, a Child Protective Services officer, stood on the porch. "Hello, Mrs. Richardson. We received a call suspecting child neglect." The children turned pale. "Please come in," I said. "As you can see, the children just had an outburst." Lauren observed, took photos, and took notes. "The house was damaged by the children?" Isaiah mumbled. "Mom said that's how we express ourselves." "Meaning your mother encourages the destruction of other people's property?" Tiana whispered. "Mom said you're old, and what you think doesn't matter." "And where is the children's mother now?" "Working in Miami," Devin replied mechanically. "Working, you say?" I showed Lauren Kendra's Facebook, a new photo, her and Dominic toasting on a yacht. "She looks very busy indeed," Lauren said quietly. She interviewed each child in turn. I picked up the pieces of the photos. Each piece was a memory, but instead of pain, I felt lightness. I wasn't losing the past, I was reclaiming the future. An hour later, Lauren stepped out. "Mrs. Richardson, this is severe emotional neglect. There is clear psychological manipulation. Devin is bordering on depression. Tiana shows signs of anxiety, and Isaiah is mimicking adult behavior. What do I need to do now? Document everything. When Terrence arrives, I need to speak with him. When the mother returns, I will open a formal investigation." Lauren left. The 3 children sat on the steps, no longer looking like the little tyrants they were when they arrived, but exactly what they were, scared and abandoned children. "They're going to take us away from Mom and Dad, right?" Isaiah asked, trembling. "No, my love." I sat down next to them. "No one is taking you away from your father. But things will change. It will hurt. Change always hurts. But it is necessary." Devin asked softly, eyes downcast. "What about Uncle Dominic? Dad will die of sadness if he finds out." "No, son. Your father is stronger than you think, and he deserves to know the truth. We all deserve to know the truth." That afternoon, as the 3 of them cleaned up the mess on their own, with no arguments this time, I heard Tiana whisper to Devin, "What if Grandma is right? What if Mom really doesn't love us?" "Shut up," Devin replied, but his voice was no longer certain. Mom has to love us. She's our mother." Even Devin was starting to doubt. The armor of the lie was cracking. and about to shatter. Tonight, Terrence will knock. On the table are the camera, the recordings, and undeniable truths. When he finishes listening, the question will no longer be, "What did Kendra do?" but, "How do we save the children?" That evening, after a silent dinner, Isaiah walked up to me, clutching something tightly. It was a torn photograph that he had tried to tape back together, a picture of his father on graduation day. "Grandma, I'm sorry." I tried to fix it. I hugged him. For the first time since their arrival, the youngest boy hugged me back. "We can fix many things, Isaiah," I said softly. "But first, we have to accept that it was broken." On the fourth day, a small miracle occurred. I was preparing breakfast when Tiana appeared in the kitchen doorway. It was only 6:30. "You're awake, sweetie?" I couldn't sleep." She hesitated. "Can you teach me how to make peanut butter cookies now?" My heart felt like it would burst. "Of course, my love." We worked in silence for a while, my old hands guiding her clumsy ones as she mixed the dough, measured the brown sugar, and added the vanilla. After a moment, Tiana spoke. "Grandma, why does my mom hate you so much?" I considered my answer, kneading the dough as I replied, "Your mother doesn't hate me, Tiana. She is afraid of me." "Afraid of you? Why?" "Because I remind your mother of things she doesn't have. I worked all my life, built things with my own hands, and raised a son with good values. Your mother chose the easy, fast path, with little effort. When someone like me stands here, it's like a mirror showing her that she chose wrong. Fear gives birth to aggression." "Is my mom a bad person?" "Your mother is lost. She makes terrible decisions and is so deep in her lies that she doesn't know how to escape. But that doesn't excuse the hurt she causes you." We put the trays of cookies into the oven. The scent of peanut butter and brown sugar filled the kitchen. "You know what?" Tiana looked down at her flour-dusted fingers. "This is the first time I've ever made something with you." My mom never had time. I stroked her hair. "Now you have me, and I have all the time in the world." Just as the sun peeked out, Devin and Isaiah came down to the kitchen, drawn by the smell of freshly baked cookies. "Did you make cookies, Tiana?" Isaiah's eyes widened. "Grandma and I made them together," Tiana replied, and for the first time, a genuine smile spread across her face. We sat around the table, 3 children in their pajamas, me in my old robe, eating warm cookies with milk. "This is so good," Isaiah said, crumbs dusting his face. "Because it's made with love," I smiled. "Your great-grandmother taught me this recipe when I was little. Now I'm passing it on to you. We're history?" Isaiah wondered. "We are living history, son." Everyone carries the story of those who came before Devin was quiet, his eyes fixed on a photo on the wall. Terrence, at his age, holding the bicycle I had saved 6 months to buy him. "Was Dad happy when he was little?" Devin finally asked. "Your father had the most important things," I answered. "Love, safety, and the belief that no matter how hard life was, his mother was always there." "We don't have that," Devin whispered. I reached across and took his hand. "You do now." That afternoon, we did something special. I taught all 3 to plant tomatoes in the garden. "Why do we need to know how to grow tomatoes?" Devin still grumbled, but he knelt on the ground beside me. "Because taking care of something teaches you responsibility, patience, and that good things take time." We dug holes, placed the seedlings, and watered them. Their hands were covered in brown soil, just like mine. "Look here." I pointed to the old tomato bush in the corner. It was withered because no one cared for it for a long time. I started watering it again 2 days ago. Now new leaves are sprouting. It came back to life? Isaiah lightly touched a leaf. It did. Everything, if cared for properly, can recover. Tiana looked at me. "You're talking about us, aren't you?" "I'm talking about all of us. About this family. A tray of cookies, a few tomato seedlings, and a family quietly turning around. But could that small miracle withstand the storm that was coming, when the door opened and an exhausted father returned to face the truth? That evening, Terrence arrived after work. He was exhausted, his engineer uniform stained with oil, his eyes sunken with fatigue. "Mom, I don't think I can keep going." He sat down, gasping. 14 hours of work, coming home to Kendra being cold, the kids being distant. I feel like I'm dying inside. "Son," I took his hand, "I have something to tell you. It will hurt, but you need to know." I handed him the envelope. Inside were the printed messages between Kendra and Dominic, the credit card reports, and the social media photos. Terrence opened each sheet, his hands trembling. With every page, his face grew paler. "There must be a mistake." "Kendra is at a sales conference." "No, son. She is in Miami with her lover." I pressed play on an audio file. Kendra's voice echoed. "The kids are in my way. I'll get rid of them the first chance I get. Michael is so stupid he won't even realize." I saw the moment my son shattered. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just sank into the chair like a cut string. "I'm an idiot," he mumbled. "A complete idiot." "No, Terrence. You are a man who trusted the wrong person. Now you need to be strong for your children, Dad." Devin stood in the doorway. He had heard everything. Terrence looked up, and for the first time in years, he truly saw his son, not as a bad kid, but as a terrified teenager desperately needing his father. "Devin, son." "We've known about Uncle Dominic for a long time, Dad." Tiana and Isaiah peeked out from behind their brother, stopping short at the threshold, afraid to take another step. "Come here." Terrence opened his arms, and for the first time in I don't know how long, I watched the children run into their father's embrace, the four of them hugged, crying. I quietly brewed coffee. Sometimes tears are the first step towards healing. That night, after Terrence put the children to bed early, we sat in the kitchen. "Mom, I'm scared. What if Kendra becomes violent? What if she tries to take the children by force? That's why we have a plan. The day she returns, the children will be at Carol's house. The police will be notified. The lawyer will be present. She won't be alone with the children for a single minute. And what if the children miss their mother later? What if they hate me for separating them from her? They will miss the mother they never had, not the one they have. With therapy and love, they will heal." I looked into the living room. The children were curled up on the sofa watching a movie. In just 4 days, they had changed so much. They were no longer the little tyrants, but genuine children, in need of love and boundaries. There were 8 more days until Kendra returned. 8 days to continue building the foundation. But tonight, for the first time in years, I heard real laughter in my house. The laughter of a family finding each other again. And suddenly, all the old pain was worth it. That 5th morning, I woke up at 5 by a faint sound, a clear voice singing from the kitchen below. I went down and found Tiana standing in front of the coffee machine, her face full of concentration. "Sweetie, what are you doing?" I asked. She started, nearly spilling the water jug. I wanted to do something nice for you." "Like you did for us," I smiled, pulling her closer. "The nicest thing you can do is let me teach you how to make coffee the right way." We sat together as the sun peeked through the window, gentle golden rays illuminating the old wooden table. I showed her how to measure the water, how to let the coffee beans bloom, and how to wait patiently for the right moment. "Grandma," Tiana asked softly, watching each drop of coffee fall, can she change?" That was the question I always feared. "People can change," I said slowly, "but only if they truly want to, and only if they are brave enough to face what they've done. Your mother, I'm not sure she's reached that point." Tiana bowed her head. "I still love her. Does that mean I'm bad?" "No, sweetie." I turned her to face me, looking straight into her teary eyes. "It means You are a good person. You can love someone, but still need to protect yourself from them. You can hope they change, but still set boundaries. Love doesn't mean accepting hurt. Tears rolled down her cheeks. But I feel like I'm betraying her. No, my love. You are not betraying her. You are learning to choose yourself, and there is nothing wrong with that. Later that day, after breakfast, Devin came to find me in the garden where I was watering the tomatoes. "Grandma, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Of course, son." We sat down on the old wooden bench, the one my husband made by hand. Devin looked down, his voice as soft as the wind. "Am I like my mom?" "Sometimes I feel like there is so much anger inside me. I'm scared I'll end up like her." "Listen to me, Devin," I said gently. "Anger doesn't make you a bad person. What you do with it is what defines you. Your mother used anger to destroy. You can use it to protect, to build, to fix what is wrong. But I said awful things to you. I broke your stuff. And now you are sitting here being honest with yourself. That's something your mother has never done. You are changing, Devin." He was silent for a long time. "I'm scared," Devin finally said. "Scared when Mom comes back, everything will go back to the way it was. I'm scared I'll forget this feeling, the feeling of being truly loved." I put my arm around his shoulder. "You won't forget. Once you know the difference between love and manipulation, you can never truly go back." Sunlight streamed into the small garden, reflecting on the children's dirt-stained hands. Inside the house, the cracks were beginning to close, but in the distance, a storm was still forming, and its name was Kendra. That afternoon, while the children were doing their homework, a new routine we established, I heard a small argument in the room. "But Mom said," Isaiah began. "Mom lied," Tiana shot back. "She said a lot of things, and almost all of them were lies." "Grandma isn't awful. She's the only one who truly loves us." I stood outside the door, my heart pounding. "But if Mom knows I said that, she'll be very angry," Isaiah whispered. "Then let her be angry," Tiana said, her voice shaking. "I'm tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of hating Grandma when she's the best person we have. Tired of saying Mom is perfect when she left us to be with someone else." There was a sob. Then Tiana's voice softened. "It's okay, Isaiah. You can cry too. It's been a long time since we could cry without being afraid." I quietly walked away. Sometimes the most important moments happen when adults don't interfere. That evening, Terrence stayed for dinner. He had taken the day off work, the first time in 3 years, just to be with his children. We cooked dinner together, for the first time, truly together. Devin chopped vegetables, Tiana mixed the salad, Isaiah set the table, Terrence cooked the meat, and I prepared dessert. The small kitchen suddenly filled with laughter, the clatter of pots and pans, and a wonderful aroma. "It feels like a real family," Isaiah said and paused. "I mean, we are a family. But now, it feels more real." "You're right," Terrence replied, his voice thick with emotion. "This is the first time in a long time that I've felt we are truly a family." Midway through the meal, Devin asked, "Dad, why did you love Mom in the first place?" Terrence put down his fork, pensive. "I think I was lonely. Growing up only with Grandma, I dreamed of a big family, a wife, a perfect home. When your mother appeared, beautiful, saying the words I wanted to hear, I confused being needed with being loved." "And now?" Tiana asked quietly. "Now I know the difference," Terrence said, his eyes on all three. "Real love doesn't control, doesn't force choices, doesn't make us worse versions of ourselves." After the children went to bed, Terrence and I sat on the porch. The chirping of crickets blended with the warmth of the Alabama night. "Mom," he said softly, "I'm sorry." "Sorry for what?" for leaving you alone all these years, for not seeing clearly what Kendra was doing, for letting her insult you. I failed as a son." I took his hand. "No, Terrence. You didn't fail. You were manipulated. Those are two very different things. But how can you forgive me so easily?" I looked at his calloused hand, the hand that was once tiny, holding my finger when he was small. "Because I know who you are. You're the 3-year-old boy who lost his father. You're the child who watched his mother work herself to exhaustion, but still learned that love means sacrifice. You're the man trying to be a father, a husband, even though you were never taught how." I smiled gently. "There's only one thing I failed to teach you: how to spot someone taking advantage of your love. And that's my fault." We sat in silence, listening to the wind rustle through the maples. "Will the children be okay?" Terrence asked quietly. "They will be okay. With time, with therapy, with real love. But you have to understand, Terrence, there will be times they miss their mother. No matter what Kendra did, she is still their mother. A child's heart doesn't let go easily." "I know." He looked into the distance. "Despite everything Kendra did, a part of me still remembers the person I once loved. Or at least, the person I thought I loved." "That's natural, son," I said softly. "Grieving what could have been, the broken dream, doesn't mean you want to go back. Let that sadness teach you to cherish what remains." On the 6th day, Lauren from Child Protective Services returned to interview Terrence. While they talked, I sat with the children in the garden. We trimmed leaves, tied up the tomato vines, and watered each base. "Grandma," Devin asked, "what will happen when Mom comes back?" "The truth will happen," I replied. "And sometimes the truth isn't pleasant, but it's necessary." "I'm scared," Isaiah whispered. "So am I, my love." But courage doesn't mean not being afraid. Courage means walking forward, even when you are. I placed my hands on their shoulders. "You will not be alone. I am here. Your father is here. And now you know that you deserve to be loved truthfully." Tiana's eyes welled up. "I don't want to leave here." "I want to stay with you forever." I hugged her close. "This house is always open to you, sweetie. No matter what happens, this is always home." 4 more days until Kendra returns. 4 days to strengthen what we have built. 4 days before the storm hits. But this time, we were ready. The 7th day brought a discovery that changed everything. I was doing laundry when I found an old phone in Devin's jacket pocket. It wasn't the iPhone he used every day, but a cheap Android device. Curious, I turned it on. The messages that appeared sent a chill down my spine. A conversation between Kendra and someone named Marcus, not Dominic. "Baby, I can't wait for all this to be over," Kendra wrote. "Miami is just the first step. Once we get the insurance money, we can go anywhere." "Insurance money?" Marcus asked. "Terrence has a $500,000 life insurance policy, and the old lady May has a $200,000 policy, with Terrence as the beneficiary. If they both have an accident, that's $700,000. My heart stopped. She wasn't just planning to leave. She was discussing murder. I scrolled further. A more recent segment. "I found someone. He'll do it when I get back to Birmingham. Car accident. Clean. No one will suspect." It was clear. This was no longer about divorce or custody. This was about life and death. I immediately called Carol. "May, call the police now," she insisted. "This is a murder plot." I looked out at the garden. Devin teaching Isaiah how to throw a ball. Tiana picking flowers. I knew, once the police got involved, their childhood would shatter. But if I did nothing, they could lose both their father and their grandmother. "I will call," I said, "but I have to tell Terrence first." My son stopped by during his break. When he read the messages, he collapsed onto a chair, his face ashen. She wanted to kill us?" It looks that way. And the children? His eyes were frantic. That's why we have to act now. I had a contact connect me with a detective, Rodriguez. He arrived, examined the phone, and stated bluntly, "This is evidence. We will get a warrant for Kendra Wallace's arrest." "She's in Miami," I said. "We'll coordinate with the Miami police." Then he looked at me. "Where did this phone come from?" "In Devon's jacket pocket. I think Kendra left it behind." "We need to ask him." Devon walked in, his eyes wide. "It's my mom's. She used this one to talk to people Dad didn't know." "Did you ever hear your mother talk about an accident?" Rodriguez asked. Devon bit his lip. I knelt down to his level. "Devon, even the smallest detail, our lives might depend on it." Tears welled up. "One night, Mom thought I was asleep. She talked about how to make it look like an accident. I didn't understand then." "When was this?" "About 2 weeks ago, before she went to Miami. Everything happened very quickly. Miami police arrested Kendra at the hotel. Dominic was detained for questioning. Marcus was arrested in Atlanta while traveling toward Birmingham. In his car, they found a gun, a brake-cutting kit, and a phone with Kendra's messages and my house address. We were safe, but the price was too high. The messages, the arrest warrants, the evidence, it was all filed. But the truth, when it touches a child's heart, is always tearing and painful. Before peace, we had to go through the breaking. That evening we sat in the living room. Me, Terrence, Devon, Tiana, Isaiah. Detective Rodriguez and Dr. Chen, a child trauma specialist, were present. Terrence began, his voice choked. "Children, I have to talk about your mother." "Mom was arrested, wasn't she?" Tiana asked immediately. "I saw the police." Terrence nodded. "Your mother did very bad things. Things that could have hurt Grandma and me. Hurt how?" Isaiah trembled. Dr. Chen spoke softly, but clearly. "Your mother discussed ways to eliminate your grandmother and father." To make it look like an accident. There was a sharp gasp. Devon jumped up, his face red. "No!" "Mom wouldn't do that. Everyone is lying." "Son," Terrence reached out. "Don't touch me. Everyone wants to make Mom the bad guy. She loves us." He ran off, the door slamming shut. Tiana sat frozen. "Mom wanted to kill Dad and Grandma. For money?" "I'm so sorry, sweetie." I held her close. Tiana burst into sobs, the cries coming from deep within her chest. Isaiah climbed onto Terrence's lap, burying his face. "Dad, I'm scared." "I know," Terrence's voice shook, "but we are safe now." Mom cannot hurt anyone anymore. That night was the longest of my life. Devon locked himself in his room, crying. Tiana slept in my room, clutching my arm tightly. Isaiah insisted on sleeping between Terrence and me, afraid that if he blinked, we would disappear. Around 3 a.m, Devon's door opened. I went to the top of the stairs and saw him sitting hunched over, hugging a pillow. I sat beside him, silent. After a long time, he whispered, "Why does Mom hate us so much?" "This isn't about hating you," I said slowly. "Your mother has a kind of sickness of the soul, one that doctors struggle to cure. She only sees herself, and that makes her dangerous." "I still love her," he sniffled. "Does that mean I'm broken too?" "No, son." I put my arm around his shoulder. "It means you have a good heart, one that still knows how to love even after being hurt. That's a gift, not a curse. Promise me, Dad, and you won't go anywhere?" "I promise." We sat on the stairs in the dark, grandmother and grandson, alive and whole. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to cry, not out of despair, but relief. We survived, the whole family, but the road to healing is still long. The days following Kendra's arrest felt like living in a waking nightmare. Reporters swarmed outside the door, shouting through the gate, "Mrs. Richardson, how do you feel knowing your daughter-in-law planned to kill you?" "Detective Rodriguez, is the case related to life insurance?" I kept the curtains drawn, keeping the children inside the house. But they weren't fooled. They understood. After the storm, silence isn't peace. It's the aftershock, the force that compels people to look at themselves. The 8th day, which should have been Kendra's return day, we sat in the living room with Dr. Chen and a new lawyer named Martinez, specializing in family cases. "You need to understand," Dr. Chen spoke gently. "Your mother will have to stay in prison for a very long time, possibly many years. During that time, you will live with your father and can see your grandmother often." "Do we have to see Mom?" Tiana asked. "No, not if you don't want to." "That is your right. I don't want to," she replied instantly, then whispered, "Am I a bad person?" "No, sweetie," Devin said, speaking for the first time since that night. "You are protecting yourself." Like Grandma taught us, I looked at him, surprised and proud. On the 9th day, we began real family therapy. Dr. Chen came 3 times a week, creating a safe space in the living room where the children could say anything without fear of judgment. The first session was the hardest. "I want each of you to draw a picture of your family," she said, handing out paper and crayons. Isaiah drew the house with 4 people: Dad, Grandma, and his 2 siblings. No Mom. Tiana drew a sinking ship with a woman's shadow falling off the deck. But Devin silenced the room. He drew a child standing between 2 paths, one bright and full of flowers, one dark with shadows. "This is me," he said softly. "I don't know which path is right." One part wants to forget Mom to be happy with Dad and Grandma. The other part feels guilty, like I'm betraying her. Dr. Chen placed a hand on his shoulder. "Devin, loving your father and grandmother doesn't mean betraying your mother. You can grieve the mother you should have had, yet still choose a safe, kind life." "But she's still my mom." "Yes, and you will always love her, but love does not mean enduring pain." On the 10th day, the postman brought a letter from Kendra, sent from the Miami Detention Center. Terrence held the letter, his hand shaking. "I don't know if I should read it." "Do you children want to hear it?" I asked. Devin nodded. "We need to know what she says." Terrence opened the letter, reading slowly. "Dearest Terrence and my beloved children, I know everyone is saying terrible things about me. But I never wanted to hurt anyone. Those were just words said in anger. Devin, Tiana, Isaiah, I love you more than anything. Don't let them turn you against me. And Mrs. Richardson, she has always been jealous of me. Don't listen to her. I will get out of here soon. When I do, we will be a family again. Love, Mom." The room was silent. Then Isaiah looked up and said clearly, "Mom is lying." Everyone turned to look. "Mom always says nice things and does bad things. I don't believe her anymore." Tiana nodded. "She said Grandma was toxic. But Mom is the one who's toxic." Devin was silent for a long time. Then he stood up, took the letter, and tore it to shreds. "We don't need lies anymore. We have the truth." Terrence bent his head and cried, this time tears of liberation. His children, finally, were free. On the 11th day, we went to the cemetery, where Richard, my husband, rested. The 3 children had never been allowed to come here. But today, they stood beside me before the gravestone etched, Richard James Richardson, 1962 to 1991, beloved husband, devoted father. "This is your grandfather," I said, wiping away the dust. "What was he like?" Devin asked. Terrence answered, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't remember much. But Grandma said he was the best man. He read stories to me every night, cooked Sunday breakfast, and loved your mother as if she were the sunlight." "I wish I could have met him," Tiana whispered. "You have met him," I said. Devin has his smile, Tiana has his kind eyes, and Isaiah has his compassionate heart. Isaiah placed a small stone on the gravestone. Is this a tradition, Grandma? Yes. Jewish people place stones to say they have visited, that the deceased is still remembered. Each child followed suit, the 5 living connected to one lost. Dad, Devin asked softly, if Grandpa was alive, would things be different? Maybe, Terrence said, but what's certain is he would be proud of you for choosing love instead of fear. That afternoon, Carol appeared on the porch with a box. May, I think you should have this. Inside was an old album, photos of me and Terrence through the years, from pictures at the park, graduation day, Christmas, to simple moments. My mother kept these, Carol said. She was always proud of you. Of how you raised your son alone, I flipped through the pages, tears falling. Tiana cheered, Grandma was so young! And you look happy. I was happy, I replied, because I had the most precious thing, love. Devin smiled. You still do. You have us. And he was right. In that moment, every sacrifice made sense. That evening, around the dinner table, I said, we have been through 11 life-changing days. But this isn't the end. It's the beginning. The beginning of what? Isaiah asked. Of a real family. Of unconditional love. Of a life where you know you are loved and you deserve good things. And of making cookies every week, Tiana added. And growing tomatoes, Isaiah laughed. And telling the truth, Devin said. Terrence raised his glass of water. To Mom, the one who saved this whole family. To Grandma, the children chimed in. But as I looked around the table, seeing my son finding himself again, seeing 3 children learning to love without fear, I knew I didn't save them. We saved each other. If you believe in the power of love and healing, hit subscribe so you don't miss stories that touch the heart, where the darkness ends and the light begins.